Montana Territory, 1881. The wind carried snow across the empty plains like a ghost running from something it could not outrun. Isaia Whitlow rode through it anyway. His coat was thick and dusted in white, his horse kicking up crusted snow with every step. He had been riding since dawn, but he was not the kind of man to turn back, not when someone needed help. He had heard about her from a trapper passing through Fort Benton. Said she lived alone in a burned-out ranch house, half a day north, with nothing but a dog and a scar too deep for any doctor to fix. Isaia did not ask for much more than that. He found the place just before sundown. The chimney leaned, the barn was half collapsed, and the house looked like it had not seen warmth in years. But there was smoke rising from the chimney still standing, and that meant someone was alive in there. He knocked once. Then again, louder, nothing. He was about to step back when the door creaked open. A woman stood there, rifle in her hands, one boot on the threshold. Her coat was patched, her eyes sharp. "You lost?" she asked. "No," Isaia said. "You are Olivia O'Dell," she nodded once. Dark hair knotted behind her head. A hard line to her jaw, but her voice was steady. "Who sent you?" "No one, just heard you might need help." "I do not." "You are limping," he said, quiet but sure. "And that dog behind you is too old to keep watch." Olivia stared at him for a long moment, then stepped back. "Get in before the cold kills you." Inside, the place was bare. The hearth was burning low and a pot hung above it. The dog, gray and stiff-legged, watched Isaia but did not move from its place beside the fire. "I do not have anything worth taking," Olivia said. "And I do not need saving." "I am not here to take anything," Isaia said. He took off his gloves and set them near the fire. "You live alone." "I do now," he nodded. "You got kin." "They are buried under the apple tree." He looked down, jaw tight. "Husband?" "No." Her eyes did not flinch. "Brothers, father, they were shot trying to keep this land." Isaia sat down on the edge of a wooden chair. "I am not here to buy it." She did not answer. He let the silence stretch. The wind howled outside and the fire cracked. "You need help fixing the roof," he said softly. "And that fence out back is near falling. I can manage. You should not have to manage alone." "I am not your responsibility." "I know that," Isaia said, "but I am here anyway." She stared at him for a while, then turned to stir the pot hanging over the fire. "Soup's thin," she said. "I have jerky in my saddlebag." That night she let him sleep in the barn. He did not mind. The roof leaked, but it was warmer than the trail. The old dog crept in and laid near his feet. In the dark, Isaia watched the snow fall through the gap in the roof and thought about the way Olivia had looked at him. Like she wanted to believe him but had forgotten how. He stayed 2 days. Fixed the fence, chopped wood, cleared out the barn. Olivia did not talk much. But one afternoon he found her standing near the old tree out back, staring at the crooked headstones. "My mother died before the war," she said without looking at him. "My father came back from it different, meaner. My brothers tried to keep the land together. Then one spring, a group of men rode in thinking they could scare us off. They were wrong, but we paid for it." "I am sorry," Isaia said. "Truly." "I was shot," she said. "In the side. My brothers carried me inside. They died on the porch." She lifted her coat. The scar ran from her ribs to her hip, puckered and raw looking, even now. "I can barely lift a bucket some days," she said. "I limp. I wake up screaming sometimes. That is what is left of me." Isaia stepped closer, not touching her. "You are still standing," he said. "You fought to stay alive." "That's not nothing." She looked at him, eyes sharp again. "You do not know me." "Not yet," he said, "but I reckon I would like to." That night she let him eat beside her at the fire. She laughed once, quiet but real, when he told her how he lost his first horse to a prairie dog hole. The next morning she was waiting when he came in from the barn. You are leaving, she asked. I got work down in Helena, he said, but I will come back. You do not have to. I want to. She looked down, fingers curling over the edge of the table. I can't marry, she said quietly. I am not whole. Isaia stepped closer. He did not rush. He just reached out and gently took her hand in his. Then I will be the rest. Her breath caught. Her eyes filled, but no tears fell. I do not know if I can love right anymore, she whispered. You do not have to know now, Isaia said. Just let me stay. Let us see what it becomes. She nodded, barely. He kissed her knuckles. Her hand trembled but did not pull away, and that was enough for now. Isaia came back in early March, before the thaw had taken hold but after the worst of the freeze had passed. The cottonwoods along the creek looked brittle as bone, and the wind had quieted to a whisper instead of a scream. His horse carried supplies strapped tight under canvas, and his shoulders carried something he hadn't had in years' hope, plain and steady. Olivia was outside when he arrived, kneeling in the dirt with her sleeves rolled up, coaxing frostbitten shoots of chive and onion from the thawing earth. When she looked up, her expression didn't shift, but she pushed hair from her face with fingers streaked in soil and said, "You're early." "Didn't want to miss the planting," he said, easing from the saddle. She stood slowly, brushing off her skirts. "You bring seed, beans, squash, barley. Mule deer jerky too. You planning on staying through summer?" He met her eyes and didn't look away. "I was hoping to stay through harvest." She didn't smile, but her hands stilled at her sides. "You'll have to build a better shed if you want to keep grain. The old one leaks. I'll get to it in the morning." That night she let him sleep inside. The hearth was burning low when she handed him a folded quilt and a worn pillow. "Floor's yours," she said. "Dog doesn't share," he nodded, kneeling to spread the bedding near the wall. "I don't snore." "Neither do I," she said, and turned away. They lived side by side after that, days filled with labor, quiet meals, and the slow, steady rhythm of rebuilding. Isaia dug post holes while Olivia tacked wire. She limed the root cellar while he patched the roof. They didn't speak unless there was something worth saying. One evening, after mending a harness with cracked leather, Isaia asked, "You ever think about leaving this place?" Olivia didn't look up from the iron she was sharpening. "Used to, when I was younger. Before I knew what it cost to stay. And now," she tested the blade against her palm, "now it's mine. That's reason enough." He nodded, watching the firelight catch on her cheekbone. "It's good land, just needs time." "That's all anything needs," she said. "Time and someone who won't run." By late April, the fields were planted. They marked the last row with a strip of cloth tied to a stick, and Olivia leaned on the hoe, her breath catching. Isaia handed her the water gourd. "You all right? I get tired sooner, that's all. We can rest." She drank, wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. "You never ask anything," she said. "Not about what I can't do. I see what you do, that's enough." She studied him for a long moment. "You from the South, Arkansas?" "Near the White River." "Why'd you leave?" "Too many ghosts. Not enough left worth staying for." She nodded and handed back the gourd. "Then you understand, I do." That night, as the moon rose over the prairie, Olivia sat on the porch with her coat draped over her shoulders. Isaia joined her, 2 mugs of warmed cider in hand. They drank in silence until the last light faded. "I used to be afraid of quiet," she said, setting her mug down. "Felt like something was waiting in it. And now it feels like breathing." He watched her hands, rough from rope and winter. "You're stronger than most men I've met. I'm not trying to be anything," she said. "Just trying to last." He reached over and covered her hand with his. She didn't pull away. "I want to build something here," he said. "Not just fences and sheds, a life with you." Her voice was quiet. "Even if I can't give you children," he didn't flinch. "I want you, not for what might be." just for who you are." She looked at him then, really looked, and he saw the walls she carried shift like snow sliding off a roof in spring. "You said you'd be the rest," she whispered. "I meant it." She didn't smile, but she turned her hand to lace her fingers through his. And for the first time in her long, hard life, she let herself lean into someone instead of away. By June, the garden had taken hold. Squash blossoms spread low to the soil, and the beans climbed the twine Isaia had strung between cedar stakes. Olivia moved slower in the heat, but her eyes were clearer now, less guarded. She had begun humming under her breath while she worked, soft tunes without words, and Isaia listened without ever asking where they came from. One morning he found her standing beside the creek, skirts hitched above her ankles, bare feet sunk into the mud. Her arms were crossed, but her face was still. He approached without speaking, boots crunching over dry reeds. "I thought the water might help the ache in my hip," she said, eyes on the current. "Feels like it pulls the pain out some. You're not limping today. It comes and goes." "I don't ask more than it wants to give." He glanced at the line of her shoulders, the way she stood steady even with the current tugging at her legs. "You ever think you'd stay here for good?" he asked. She looked over then, lips parted like she hadn't expected the question. "I used to think I'd die here." He shifted his weight. "And now, I'm not sure I mind staying if it's not just me." They walked back together, her boots dangling from her fingers, his arm brushing hers once when the path narrowed. She didn't flinch. That evening, Isaia brought in a chair he'd built from pine boards left in the barn. He set it near the window where the light fell in late. "It's rough," he said, "but it'll hold." She ran her fingers over the armrest. "You made this for me," he nodded, rubbing the back of his neck. "I noticed you favor standing after midday. Figured you'd rest easier if your back had something solid behind it." She didn't sit. She just looked at him, long enough that he almost turned away. "My mother used to say that love's in what gets done, not what gets said." He looked up. "What did your father say?" "That it was a fool's thing to chase. Didn't stop him from dying with her name on his lips." The wind rattled the window pane. Isaia stepped closer. "I've never been one for chasing," he said. "But I know when I've found something worth staying for." Her jaw worked once, like she was chewing on a thought. "I haven't worn a ring in my life," she said. "You don't need one." "I wouldn't wear white. I haven't earned white." "You've earned every color there is," he said. She looked down. "You want a wife who can dance, who can give you sons." "I want you," he said. "Whatever comes with that, I'll carry it." She pressed her hand against his chest, fingers splayed over the fabric of his shirt, not pushing, not pulling. "I've never asked anyone to stay." "Not once." "I wasn't waiting for you to ask." They stood like that until the fire in the hearth sank to embers. Outside, the crickets started up, and the dog let out a low, contented sigh from its corner. When she finally leaned into his side, her weight slight but sure, he didn't move except to wrap his arm around her waist, careful of the place where she still hurt. And she said, quiet as breath, "Then stay." He did. By July, the earth was warm enough to go barefoot before noon. Isaia spent mornings checking the barley for mildew and afternoons pulling thistle from the far fence line. Olivia had taken to drying herbs on a rack. He built for the kitchen wall thin sprigs of mint and wild yarrow, rows of sage bundled in cotton string. The house smelled different now, cleaner, greener, like it had been scrubbed of something that used to linger. That evening, Isaia returned from the pasture with dust on his collar and a mouth dry from wind. He found her standing near the open window, arms crossed over her chest, her gaze fixed on the western sky. "There's something coming," she said without turning. He stepped beside her, watching the low clouds stack like slate over the horizon. "Too thick for a summer storm. Dust maybe. Could be dry lightning." He glanced at her hand, steady but clenched. "You want me to bring the horses in?" She nodded. "And the dog's been acting strange all day. Keeps pacing the kitchen like he's waiting on something he can't name." The wind hit just after sundown. It came hard and sudden, rattling the shutters and slamming the back gate open against its hinges. Isaia bolted it with rope while Olivia moved candles to the table and lit them one by one. The old dog curled beneath the stove, eyes wide. They ate cold cornbread and boiled greens by candlelight, both of them listening to the wind scrape against the walls. "My father once said the wind can peel a man down to what he's made of," she said quietly. Isaia reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers. "Then let it come. I've nothing to hide." She looked at him, really looked, and this time her eyes weren't guarded or hard. They were searching. "I've been thinking about something," she said. "Something I haven't said out loud before." He waited. "It's not just the hip," she said. "There's days I can't feel much of anything. Like part of me shut off the day I was pulled off that porch. I didn't think it was coming back." He didn't speak. "But it has," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "Since you came, bit by bit." "Not all at once." Isaia leaned forward, elbows on the wood. "That's not weakness, that's healing." "I don't know what to do with it," she said. "You don't have to know yet." The wind howled, then stilled for a breath. Olivia rose and crossed to the hearth where the last coals glowed faint. She stood there, lit from behind by candlelight, her voice low. "If I let you stay through winter, it won't be as a visitor." Isaia stood slowly. "What would it be as?" She turned, not smiling but not afraid either. "As someone who belongs here. Beside me." He walked to her, his boots soft on the floorboards. He didn't reach for her, not yet. "I've never asked a woman to be my wife," he said, "but I'd ask you if you were ready." She studied his face, her own unreadable. "I won't wear lace. I won't kneel in a church. I'm not asking for that. I won't be graceful. I'll say the wrong thing. I'll wake you at night without meaning to. I'll be there when you do." She stepped forward, closing the space between them. "Then ask me." He took her hand, not as a question but as a vow. "Will you let me be the rest?" She closed her eyes. "Yes." He kissed her, then not hard, not hurried, just enough to carry the promise from his mouth to hers. Outside, the wind passed, leaving the land quiet again. Inside, they stood as one, and there was no more waiting. The wedding was quiet. Isaia carved 2 rings from cottonwood, thin and smooth, polished with beeswax Olivia had pressed from the combs left behind in the hollow tree east of the pasture. She wore her cleanest dress, the pale blue one that hung straighter now that she'd taken in the seams herself. He wore his Sunday shirt, sleeves rolled and collar open, sweat still clinging at his neck from the walk into town. They stood beneath the cottonwoods where the creek curved, the same place Olivia had once stood barefoot in the thaw, and the preacher's voice barely rose above the flutter of leaves. No guests, no music, no lace. Just the two of them, arms linked, and the sound of water moving over stone. When the preacher asked if she took Isaia Whitlow, Olivia's voice didn't tremble. "I do." Isaiah's hand found hers, firm and steady. "Then we're home now," he said. Afterward, she handed the preacher a jar of pickled onions and a folded note in her careful, looping hand. Isaia offered his last pouch of pipe tobacco. The old man nodded, tucked them both in his coat, and walked off without a word. They returned home as the sun dropped low, the sky turning to copper behind the hills. Isaia carried her boots, though she hadn't worn them all day, and Olivia kept glancing sideways at him like she still wasn't sure he was real. Inside, the hearth was cold. They hadn't lit it that morning, but Isaia struck a flame and coaxed it up while Olivia unpinned her hair. The dog shifted near the stove, tail thumping once before settling back to sleep. "You hungry?" she asked, kneeling to unshutter the small larder door. Not for food. Her hand stilled. I suppose I'll have to get used to hearing things like that now. You'll never hear them unless they're true. She straightened, brushing dust from her skirt. Then start with this one. He crossed the room in 3 steps and kissed her like the wind had never touched her roof, like the porch hadn't once run red, like everything that had ever broken had been rebuilt with the shape of her in mind. She didn't flinch, didn't pull away. Her fingers curled into his shirt, and she breathed him in like the spring soil she'd trusted to grow again. They slept that night in the bed she had once kept only for herself. No ghosts stirred. No dreams chased them. Only the sound of 2 people breathing in the dark, each one learning the shape of the other's quiet. By early August, Isaia had built a smokehouse between the barn and the well. Olivia tanned hides on a frame he'd shaped from fence rails, her hands firm, her movements sure. They traded cured meat and herbs to a passing merchant for a cast iron tub and a bolt of wool. Isaia dug a place for the tub behind the house, lined it with smooth stone, and filled it by hand from the creek. Olivia laughed soft and low the first time she stepped in. "I never thought I'd live fancy," she said, water beading on her shoulders. "Then we'll call it something else," he said, sitting on the edge and dipping a cloth in to wash her back. "Call it peace." The days shortened. The barley turned golden. Olivia stitched a quilt in the evenings from scraps of her old dresses and the flannel shirt Isaia wore through last winter. She didn't tell him what it was for, but he knew by the way her hands lingered at the seams. One evening she looked up from her stitching and said, "I think I might want to teach someone someday." "Teach what?" "How to live," she said. After, Isaia nodded. "You already have." By the time the first frost came, the cellar was full. Corn sacks lined the walls, jars of pickled carrots stacked in neat rows. They'd finished mending the barn roof just before the cold set in, and Isaia had built a new door for the chicken coop that didn't creak when the wind pushed it. They didn't speak of what they'd lost, not anymore. It lived between them in silence, in the way Isaia always left half the tea in the pot for her, in the way Olivia placed his boots near the fire before he came in from the pasture. One night, she pulled him close by the collar when he came in from the cold. "I never thought I'd be warm again," she said. "You'll never go cold with me," he answered, and meant it. That winter, they read by lantern light from the Bible her father had left behind, though neither of them spoke aloud the parts about vengeance. They preferred the Psalms, the ones that promised rest. When spring came again, the creek ran high with meltwater, and the apple tree behind the house bloomed for the first time in 3 years. Olivia stood beneath it with Isaiah's coat around her shoulders, her hands tucked over the place where her ribs curved soft below her heart. She didn't need to say it. Isaia stepped behind her, wrapped both arms around her waist, and rested his chin on her shoulder. They stayed like that until the sun slipped behind the rise, and the petals began to fall.